The mud was still in the letters. 15 years later, still there. Brown, dried, packed into the stamped grooves of her name, like someone had tried to erase it by burying it. Bowen, Tamika. I held the dog tags in my hand on a Tuesday morning in March, sitting on my porch, coffee going cold, buck on my feet, a padded envelope from St. Louis, no return address, no note, no explanation. Just a plastic sandwich bag with 2 pieces of metal on a ball chain that someone had cleaned. Mostly, not all the way. They'd left the mud in the letters. On purpose. Somebody wanted me to know this name. Somebody wanted me to know what was done to it. It took me 4 months to find her. 4 months of dead numbers and wrong Bowens, and people who said, "Why are you asking?" Which is the question that tells you you're close. Because people only ask why you're asking when they already know the answer and they're deciding whether you deserve it. I found her in July. St. Louis, a veterinary clinic on the north side. She holds animals when they're scared. She talks to them in a voice I imagine is very quiet and very steady, because that's the voice you use with a military working dog. And once you learn it, you don't unlearn it. It becomes the way you talk to everything that's afraid. She called me back 2 days after I left my message. She said, "Are you the guy who tells the stories?" I said yes. She said, "Who sent you my tags?" I said I didn't know. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think I know who sent them. And if it's who I think it is, then I'll talk to you. But not on the phone. You come here." I drove 11 hours. Because the story behind those tags is this. 3 men decided she didn't belong. They spent 9 months proving it, daily, quietly, in ways designed to be unprovable. They hid her gear. They cut her leash in half. They moved her dog's food bowl so he wouldn't eat. They spread a rumor she couldn't control her dog, said it loud enough to hear, quiet enough to deny. And on a Thursday morning in March, the day before the evaluation that would determine whether she kept her dog or lost him forever, they took her tags off the hook in her locker and they put them in a mud pit. Face up, name visible, so she'd see it. So the message would be clear. This is where you belong. This is where your name belongs. In the mud. She stood at the edge of that pit. 19 years old, 115 pounds. No family. No advocate. No one in the world who would pick up a phone and say this isn't right on her behalf. She looked at her name in the brown water. She looked at the ball chain catching the early light. And she didn't pick them up. She turned around. Got new tags from supply, went to the kennel, got her dog, a Belgian Malinois named Rex, 68 pounds, fawn coat, black mask, the best detection dog in the class. She trained for 3 hours. She passed the evaluation the next day. Highest score, above all of them, above the 3 men who put her name in the dirt. 14 months later, in Afghanistan, Rex's nose found 18 IEDs, 18 bombs that didn't explode, 70 people who didn't die. And one of the men from that mud pit, one of the 3 who decided she didn't belong, was in a convoy that Rex cleared, sitting in a truck with a bomb packed into the frame rail, alive because a dog he tried to take from her smelled the thing that would have killed him. He saw her after, walked up, looked at her, said nothing, turned around, walked away. Rex is 11 years old now. He sleeps at the foot of her bed. His hips are bad. His eyes are clouding. He's slow, but he's there every night, the same position, still guarding. The mud is still in the letters on my desk. I won't clean it. The mud is the proof. The dog tags arrived in a padded envelope. Manila, no return address. Just a postmark from St. Louis, Missouri, dated March 14th, 2021. Inside the envelope, a plastic sandwich bag, the kind you'd pack a child's lunch in, and inside the bag, a pair of standard issue U.S. Army identification tags on a ball chain. The chain was intact. The tags were not clean. They had been cleaned. Someone had wiped them down, clearly with something, but the residue was still there. In the stamped letters of the name, in the grooves of the serial number, in the tiny channel where the rubber silencer meets the metal edge. Brown residue, dried mud, old mud, mud that had been there long enough to become part of the metal, to fill the letters like ink fills an engraving, to make the name harder to read rather than easier. The name on the tags, Bowen, Tamika L. The blood type, O-POS. The religious preference, an O-Rel Pref. The serial number, I'm not going to read it to you. There was no note in the envelope, no letter, no explanation, just the tags in the bag and the envelope with the St. Louis postmark and no return address. I held them in my hand for a long time that morning, sitting on my porch in Beaufort, coffee going cold, Buck lying at my feet the way he does when he knows I'm not getting up anytime soon. I held them and I looked at the mud in the letters and I thought, somebody wants me to know this name. Somebody sent these to me because they heard what I do, that I collect names, that I tell stories, that I'm the old man on the porch who won't let certain things disappear. And they want me to know this name. It took me 4 months to find her. For months of phone calls and emails and dead ends, and people who said, I don't know a Bowen, and people who said, I knew a Bowen, but not that one, and people who said, why are you asking? Which is the question that tells you you're getting close, because people only ask why you're asking when they know the answer and they're deciding whether to give it to you. I found her in July 2021. She lives in St. Louis. She works at a veterinary clinic, not as a vet, as a technician. She handles the animals. She holds them when they're scared. She talks to them in a voice that I imagine is very quiet and very steady, because that's the voice you use with a military working dog. And once you learn that voice, you don't unlearn it. It becomes the way you talk to everything that's afraid. She didn't want to talk to me. I called the clinic. The receptionist said she'd pass along my message. Tamika called back 2 days later. She said, are you the guy who tells the stories? I said yes. She said, who sent you my tags? I said I didn't know. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I think I know who sent them. And if it's who I think it is, then I'll talk to you. But not on the phone. You come here. I drove to St. Louis. 11 hours from Beaufort. I could have flown, but I don't like flying anymore. Not since Maribel died. Not since there's nobody to call when I land. Not since the purpose of arriving somewhere fast disappeared along with the person who was waiting. So I drove. 11 hours through the Carolinas and Tennessee and Kentucky and Southern Illinois, through the flat farmland that turns into the sprawl that turns into the city that sits on the river that divides the country in half. I met Tamika Bowen at a diner on Natural Bridge Avenue in North St. Louis. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth by the window, a cup of coffee in front of her that she wasn't drinking, her hands flat on the table the way people put their hands when they're bracing for something. She was 34 years old. Small, 5'4", maybe 120 pounds. Short hair, natural, close to her head. No utility, no muck-up. A plain gray t-shirt and jeans and work boots that had the particular scuff pattern of someone who spends their day on their feet on a concrete floor. She looked at me when I sat down. She didn't smile. She didn't extend her hand. She said, you drove 11 hours. I said, I did. She said, for dog tags. I said, for the story behind them. She looked at her coffee. She turned the cup in her hands, a slow rotation, clockwise, the handle moving from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock and back. Then she said, the story behind them is that 3 men decided I didn't belong. And a dog decided I did. That's the whole story. It wasn't the whole story. It never is when someone tells you it's the whole story. The whole story took 4 hours in that diner, and two more phone calls over the following weeks, and a conversation with a man named Sergeant First Class Darnell Okafor, who served with her at Fort Leonard Wood, and who confirmed everything she told me and added things she didn't tell me, and who said, at the end of our conversation, Bowen was the best handler I ever trained, and the three who hazed her were the worst men I ever failed to stop. I'm going to tell you about Tamika Bowen. I'm going to tell you about Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and the military working dog school, and the three handlers who decided she didn't belong, and the dog tags they put in the mud, and the Belgian Malinois named Rex who found 12 IEDs in 7 months and saved a convoy of 12 vehicles, and who is 11 years old now, and who sleeps at the foot of her bed in a small apartment in St. Louis where nobody knows what she did and nobody asks and nobody needs to because the dog knows. The dog has always known. Tamika Bowen was born in 1987 in East St. Louis, Illinois. I need you to understand what East St. Louis is because it matters. It's not St. Louis. It's across the river. It's in Illinois, not Missouri. It's a city that was once prosperous. Meatpacking plants, railroads, industry, and that has been dying for 60 years. The population in 1987, when Tamika was born, was about 40,000. Today it's less than 18,000. The median household income is under $20,000 a year. The violent crime rate is among the highest in the country. The schools are underfunded. The infrastructure is crumbling. The houses are boarded up or burned out or simply gone. Empty lots where homes used to be, grass growing through the foundations, the outlines of rooms still visible in the concrete if you know how to look. Tamika was born to a woman named Crystal Bowen, who is 17 years old. Crystal's mother, Tamika's grandmother, was 41 and already raising 3 other grandchildren. Crystal stayed for 8 months. Then she left. Not died, left. Walked out of her mother's house on a Tuesday morning in November 1987 and did not come back. Tamika's grandmother, Dorothy Bowen, who everyone called Dad, raised Tamika until Tamika was 6 years old. Then Dad had a stroke. Then Dot went into a nursing home. Then Tamika went into the system. The system. Foster care. The state of Illinois. I'm not going to give you the full accounting of Tamika Bowen's childhood in foster care because she asked me not to, and because the details are not mine to share, and because the point is not the specifics of what happened to her between ages 6 and 18. The point is this. By the time she was 18 years old, she had lived in 7 homes. 7. Some were fine. Some were not. None of them were hers. None of them had her name on the mailbox, or her height marks on the doorframe, or the particular accumulation of small, meaningless objects, a favorite cup, a worn blanket, a book with a cracked spine, that tells a child, this is where you belong. This is permanent. This is yours. She aged out of the system in 2005. 18 years old. No family. No home. No money. No plan. She had a GED, earned at 16, 2 years early because she was smart and because smart was the one thing the system couldn't take from her. She had a part-time job at a gas station on State Street. She had a room in a boarding house that cost $300 a month and that smelled like cigarettes and cooking grease and the particular chemical sweetness of cheap air freshener, trying to cover both. She enlisted in the United States Army in September 2005. She was 18 years and 4 months old. She walked into the recruiting station on Missouri Avenue in East St. Louis, a storefront between a check cashing place and a beauty supply store, the kind of recruiting station that exists in neighborhoods where the Army doesn't need to sell itself because the neighborhood has already done the selling. The neighborhood says, there is nothing here for you. The army says, there is something here for you. The transaction is simple. The transaction is old. The transaction has been happening in neighborhoods like East St. Louis since 1775. The recruiter, a staff sergeant whose name Tamika doesn't remember, which tells you something about how much the recruiter mattered to her. The recruiter asked her what she wanted to do. She said, I want to work with dogs. This is the part of the story where I need to tell you something about Tamika Bowen that she told me in the diner. Over her fourth cup of coffee, in a voice so quiet I had to lean forward to hear it. She said, I never had anything that was mine. Not a room, not a bed, not a person. When I was 9, the family I was with had a dog. A mutt, brown and white, named Biscuit. Biscuit slept on my bed every night for 11 months. Then they moved me to a different home. I never saw Biscuit again. I was 9 years old, and I understood something that day. People leave. Dogs don't. Dogs stay until you make them go. And I decided that when I grew up, I would have a dog that nobody could take from me. She enlisted as a 31K military working dog handler. Basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Then AIT, Advanced Individual Training, at the Military Working Dog School at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. She arrived at Fort Leonard Wood in February 2006. She was 19 years old. She weighed 115 pounds. She had never owned a dog. She had never trained a dog. She had never held a leash attached to a 70-pound Belgian Malinois that could run 30 miles per hour and bite with 300 pounds of force per square inch, and that had been bred for 1,000 years to do exactly 2 things: work and fight. She was terrified. She told me that. She said, I was scared of the dogs at first. Not scared they'd hurt me. Scared I'd fail them. Scared I wouldn't be good enough. Scared they'd take the dog away from me the way they took everything else. The Military Working Dog School at Fort Leonard Wood is, or was, in 2006, a 12-week course. Soldiers learn dog handling, obedience, patrol work, detection work, explosives and narcotics, and controlled aggression. They're paired with a dog in the first week. The pairing is not random. Instructors evaluate the handler's temperament, physical capability, and energy level, and they match them with a dog whose drive and personality complement the handlers. A high-energy handler gets a high-energy dog. A calm handler gets a dog that needs steadiness. The match matters. The match is everything. A bad match produces a bad team, and a bad team in a combat zone gets people killed. Tamika was paired with Rex, military working dog M694, Belgian Malinois, for years old, fawn coat with a black mask, 68 pounds, high drive, high energy, high aggression threshold, meaning he could be pushed hard before he snapped, which made him ideal for detection work in high-stress environments. He'd been trained at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio and transferred to Fort Leonard Wood for handler pairing. His previous handler had PCS, permanent change of station, to a non-K9 assignment, and Rex needed a new partner. The instructor who made the pairing was Sergeant First Class Darnell Okafor, Nigerian-American, 12 years in, 3 deployments with MWD teams. He told me, over the phone, from his home in Killeen, Texas, where he's now retired, he told me he paired Tamika with Rex because she was quiet and he was loud. She was patient and he was impatient. She needed something to pour herself into, and he needed someone who wouldn't give up on him. It was the best match I ever made, and the worst thing I ever watched happen to it. The worst thing? He means the 3 handlers. I'll get to them now. Their names were Specialist Derek Moody, Specialist Ryan Fitch, and Private First Class Aaron Goss. All male, all white, all from the same AIT class that arrived at Fort Leonard Wood 3 months before Tamika, which made them senior to her in the way that 3 months makes you senior in the military, not by rank, not by experience, not by competence, but by time. By the simple fact of having been there first. By the ownership that comes from knowing where the supply room is, and where the good chow hall is, and where the instructors park their cars, and which sergeant is strict, and which sergeant lets things slide. 3 months of institutional knowledge that they wielded like a weapon against anyone who arrived after them, and who threatened by their presence, to dilute the exclusivity of having been there first. They were not bad soldiers. I want to say that the way I always say it, because it's true and because truth matters more than narrative convenience. Moody was a competent handler. His dog, a German shepherd named Axel, performed well in training. Fitch was average. Goss was below average, but passing. They were not washouts. They were not failures. They were 3 young men in their early 20s who had found, in the MWD school, a sense of identity and belonging that they protected the way all insecure people protect the things that make them feel special, by deciding who else was allowed to have it. Tamika was not allowed to have it. That was decided before she arrived. It was decided the moment the class roster went up on the bulletin board outside the kennel building, and 3 names that had been there for 3 months saw a new name added, Bowen, Tamika L. And one of them said something. I don't know which one said it first. Tamika doesn't know. Okafor doesn't know. But someone said something, and the something became a consensus, and the consensus became a campaign, and the campaign lasted 9 months. 9 months. From February 2006, when she arrived, to November 2006, when she graduated and received orders to her first duty station. 9 months of daily, grinding, low-level harassment that never rose to the level of a single reportable incident, but that accumulated, the way water accumulates behind a dam, the way pressure accumulates in a fault line, the way damage accumulates in a body that is hit not once, but 1,000 times in 1,000 small places that don't bruise individually, but that collectively constitute a beating. Here's what they did. I'm going to list it because listing it matters. Because when you list it, you see the pattern. When you list it, you see the system. When you list it, you see that it wasn't random and it wasn't spontaneous and it wasn't just guys being guys. It was organized. It was deliberate. It was a project. Week 1, her kennel assignment sheet disappeared from a board. She showed up to the wrong kennel. The instructor marked her late. She didn't argue. She found the correct assignment and reported to it. Week 2, her leash, the 6-foot leather training leash issued to every handler, was found in the dumpster behind the kennel building, cut in half. She reported it to supply, got a new one, didn't report who she thought had done it. Week 3, a rumor circulated among the class that she'd been bitten by her dog during a training exercise. She hadn't been. Rex had never bitten her. But the rumor reached the instructors, and Okafor had to pull her aside and ask, "Bowen, have you been bitten?" She said no. He said, "I know, but I had to ask because someone told me you were." She said, "I understand, Sergeant." She didn't ask who told him. She already knew. Week 4, her dog's food bowl was moved. Not stolen, moved. From its assigned position in the kennel to a different position 6 feet away behind a partition. Rex wouldn't eat from the wrong position. Dogs are creatures of routine. They eat where they eat, they sleep where they sleep, they perform where they perform. Moving the bowl meant Rex didn't eat that morning. Tamika found the bowl, moved it back, fed Rex, said nothing. Week 5, she can't control that dog. The phrase appeared, not attributed to anyone, just present, in the air. in the conversations between handlers during breaks, in the comments made just loud enough to be heard, but not loud enough to be addressed. She can't control that dog, said while Rex was performing flawlessly, said while Rex was hitting on every detection exercise, said while Rex was responding to her commands with the precision and speed that only comes from a handler-dog bond that is working, that is real, that is deep, that is the thing the school is designed to create. The phrase was a lie. Everyone who watched Tamika work Rex knew it was a lie. Okafor knew. The other instructors knew. The other students, the ones who weren't Moody, Fitch, and Goss, knew. But the lie had power because lies don't need to be believed to do damage. Lies only need to be repeated. Repetition creates doubt. Doubt creates hesitation. Hesitation, in a dog handler, creates inconsistency. And inconsistency is the one thing a military working dog cannot tolerate, because a dog reads its handler's energy the way a seismograph reads the earth. And if the handler's energy is uncertain, the dog becomes uncertain, and an uncertain dog in a combat zone is a dead dog or a dead handler or both. That was the goal, not to get Tamika kicked out. That would be too obvious, too traceable, too risky. The goal was to make her fail, to create the conditions under which she would fail on her own, would hesitate, would doubt, would lose the connection with Rex that was the only thing keeping her in the program. The goal was to make the lie true by repeating it until she believed it. She didn't believe it. She told me. I knew what they were doing. I'm not stupid. I grew up in foster care. You learn to read people fast or you don't survive. I knew they wanted me to doubt myself. I knew they wanted me to doubt Rex. And I decided on day one, the first time my leash went missing, I decided that I would never doubt Rex. I would doubt everything else. I would doubt the Army. I would doubt the school. I would doubt myself. But I would never doubt my dog, because my dog didn't lie to me. My dog didn't hide my gear. My dog didn't spread rumors. My dog looked at me every morning with the same eyes and the same energy and the same question. What are we doing today? And I answered him. Every day. We're working. That's what we're doing. We're working. Week 6. Week 7. Week 8. The harassment continued. Small things. Constant things. Her gear moved. Her schedule changed without notification. Her name left off the training roster, requiring her to check in manually with the instructor, requiring her to be visible in a way that the others weren't, requiring her to ask for things that should have been automatic. Each incident was small. Each incident was deniable. Each incident taken alone was nothing. Taken together, they were everything. Okafor saw it. He told me he saw it from week 2, from the leash in the dumpster. He said, I knew who was doing it. I couldn't prove it. That's the thing about hazing. It's designed to be unprovable. It's designed to exist in the space between what you know and what you can document. And in the military, if you can't document it, it didn't happen. I asked him, why didn't you stop it? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I tried. I counseled all 3 of them. Verbally, not written, because I had nothing written to base it on. I told them I was watching. I told them that if I caught them, I'd end their careers. But I couldn't catch them. They were smart about it. They never did anything in front of me. They never did anything that left evidence. And Bowen wouldn't report it. I asked her multiple times. I said, Bowen, if you tell me what's happening, I can act. She said, nothing's happening, Sergeant. Every time, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. The phrase of every person who has decided that the system cannot help them and that the only path forward is through. Not around, not over, through. Through the harassment and the doubt and the daily grinding pressure of being told. Not in words, but in actions and absences, in the small cruelties that accumulate like sediment, being told that you don't belong. She went through. Week 9. The dog tags. It was a Thursday, March 30th, 2006. Tamika remembers the date because it was the day before the mid-course evaluation, the practical exam that determined whether a handler dog team would continue to the advanced phase of training or be recycled back to the beginning. The evaluation was everything. Pass it, and you were on track to graduate. Fail it, and you started over, 12 more weeks, a new dog possibly, a new class definitely. Failing was not an option for Tamika. Failing meant losing Rex. And losing Rex meant losing the only thing in her life that was hers. She went to the kennel that morning at 0500, early, before anyone else. She always went early, partly because she wanted extra time with Rex, partly because the early morning was the only time the kennel was empty, the only time she could work without being watched, without being commented on, without the constant low-frequency hum of 3 men's attention on her back. She opened her locker in the handler-ready room. Her gear was there: leash, treat pouch, muzzle, first aid kit. But her dog tags were not around her neck. She'd taken them off the night before. She always took them off to sleep, hung them on the hook inside her locker. The hook was empty. She checked the floor, checked behind the locker, checked the bench. Nothing. She stood there for a moment. One moment, she told me, one moment where she felt the thing she'd been refusing to feel for 9 weeks. The tiredness, the weight of it, the exhaustion of being the target of something you can't fight because it has no face and no name and no single moment you can point to and say, "There, that's what happened. That's the thing I can report." Then she heard it, outside, behind the kennel building. Laughter, low, male. The particular frequency of laughter that is not about joy but about power. The laughter of people who have done something and who are enjoying the doing of it and who want the enjoyment to be heard. She walked outside, behind the building. The mud pit was there, a training area, a rectangle of churned earth and standing water where dogs practice tracking in difficult terrain. It was March. Missouri in March is cold and wet, and the mud pit was full. 6 inches of brown water over a foot of thick, sucking clay that grabbed your boots and held them and didn't let go. Her dog tags were in the mud pit. She could see them. The ball chain catching the early morning light, the metal rectangles half submerged in the brown water. Her name facing up. Bowen, Tamika el visible. Readable, placed there deliberately, face up, so that she would see her own name in the mud, so that the message would be clear. This is where you belong. This is where your name belongs. In the mud, under the water, buried. Moody, Fitch, and Goss were not there. They were never there, not visibly, not provably. The laughter she'd heard had stopped by the time she came outside. The area was empty. Just her and the mud pit and her dog tags and the early morning light and the sound of Rex barking in his kennel because he could hear her outside and he wanted to be with her and he didn't understand why she wasn't coming to get him. She stood at the edge of the mud pit. She looked at her tags. She looked at her name in the mud. And she made a decision. She didn't pick them up. She told me this and I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Because that's what they wanted. They wanted me in the mud. They wanted me on my knees in that pit, reaching for my own name, getting dirty, getting low. They wanted to see me do it. They were watching. I know they were watching from somewhere. And I decided, no, I'm not getting in that mud for them. I'm not reaching for my name because they put it somewhere low. My name isn't in the mud. My name is on my dog's collar. My name is in my dog's head. My name is the first thing Rex hears every morning and the last thing he hears every night. That's what my name is. Not in a pit." She turned around. She walked back inside. She went to supply. She requested replacement tags. The supply sergeant, a specialist who didn't ask questions, issued new ones. Tamika put them on. She went to the kennel. She got Rex. She trained for 3 hours. She passed the mid-course evaluation the next day with the highest score in her class. The highest score in the class. Above Moody, above Fitch, above Goss, above every handler who hadn't spent 9 weeks being told they didn't belong. Above every handler whose gear hadn't been stolen and whose leash hadn't been cut and whose name hadn't been put in the mud. She scored highest because Rex was the best dog in the class, and because she was the best handler in the class, and because the evaluation didn't care about rumors or reputations or the opinions of 3 men who had decided, before she arrived, that she wasn't allowed to succeed. The evaluation cared about one thing. Can the dog find what it's trained to find? And can the handler read the dog when it finds it? That's all. That's the test. And Tamika and Rex passed it the way they did everything. Quietly, precisely, without drama, without announcement, without the need for anyone else to acknowledge what they'd done. Okafor told me he watched the evaluation. He said, when the scores went up, I looked at Moody. I looked at Fitch. I looked at Goss. They didn't say anything. They didn't congratulate her. They didn't even look at the board. They just went quiet. And I thought, good, be quiet. You've been loud enough. She graduated in November 2006. 12 weeks of advanced training after the mid-course eval. Detection work, patrol work, controlled aggression, vehicle searches, building searches, open area searches. She graduated second in her class overall, behind a sergeant with 6 years of experience who had retrained into the MWD field from infantry. She was 19 years old. She was a private first class. She had a dog. Rex graduated with her. That's how it works. The handler and the dog are a team. Where the handler goes, the dog goes. They're assigned together. They deploy together. They live together. The dog sleeps in the handler's room. The dog eats when the handler feeds it. The dog works when the handler works. The bond is not a metaphor. The bond is a logistical fact, a line item on a personnel roster. Handler, PFC Bowen, Tamika LMWD, Rex, M694. They were assigned to Fort Leonard Wood initially, staying on as part of the kennel staff, working base security, running detection patrols at the gates and the ammunition supply points. It was routine work, boring work, the kind of work that a high-drive dog like Rex tolerates, but doesn't love. He needed more stimulation, more challenge, more of the thing he was bred to do, which was find things that were hidden and alert his handler to their presence. Moody, Fitch, and Goss were assigned elsewhere. Moody went to Fort Hood. Fitch went to Fort Bragg. Goss went to Fort Campbell. They scattered. The three-headed thing that had made Tamika's life small and hard for 9 months broke apart and went to 3 different bases and became 3 individual men who were individually unremarkable. The power had been in the group. The power had been in the 3 of them together, reinforcing each other, validating each other, giving each other permission to do the things that none of them would have done alone. Apart, they were just soldiers. Together, they had been something worse. Tamika didn't think about them. She told me, the day they left, I didn't feel anything. Not relief, not anger, not satisfaction, nothing. They were gone and Rex was still here, and that was all that mattered. Rex was still here. Rex was still here. For words that contain everything Tamika Bowen has ever needed to know about the world. The world takes things. The world moves you from house to house and family to family, and takes your grandmother, and takes your mother, and takes your childhood, and takes your name, and puts in the mud. But the world gave her Rex, and Rex stayed. 2007, the deployment orders came. Afghanistan, Bagram Airfield. The 3rd Military Police Group, CD, was deploying a military working dog detachment. 8 handler dog teams for explosive detection work at Bagram and the surrounding forward operating bases. Tamika and Rex were on the list. She was 20 years old. She'd never been outside the United States. She'd never been on a plane. Not once. Not ever. Not even a domestic flight. The farthest she'd traveled from East St. Louis was Fort Jackson, South Carolina, for basic training. Now, she was going to Afghanistan, to a country she'd seen on television and in briefings and in the photographs that the instructor showed during training. Dusty roads, mud walls, mountains in the distance, the particular brown and tan palette of a landscape that has been at war for 40 years and that wears its wars the way old men wear their scars, openly, without shame, without the desire to hide them. She flew from St. Louis to Baltimore to Leipzig to Bagram. 26 hours of travel. Rex was in a crate in the cargo hold, climate-controlled, padded with water and a familiar blanket, but still a crate. Still a box. Still a separation. Tamika told me she didn't sleep on the flight. Not because she was nervous about Afghanistan. But that wasn't why. She didn't sleep because Rex was below her and she couldn't see him and she couldn't hear him and she couldn't put her hand on his side and feel him breathing and know that he was there, that he was still there. They landed at Bagram in March 2007. The air smelled like diesel fuel and burning trash and dust, the particular dust of Afghanistan, fine as talcum powder, brown-gray, that gets into everything and stays in everything and that you're still finding in your gear years after you come home. Tamika stepped off the plane and felt the dust on her face and in her lungs, and she thought, this is where we work now. This is where Rex finds things. This is where it matters. She went to the cargo area. She found Rex's crate. She opened it. He came out, not frantic, not panicked, but alert. Ears forward, nose working, taking in the new smells, the new sounds, the new everything. He looked at her. She looked at him. She said, and she told me this, she told me the exact words. She said, "We're here, buddy. Let's go to work." They went to work. The work was this. Every day, sometimes twice a day, Tamika and Rex went out. They searched vehicles at checkpoints. They searched buildings before VIPs entered them. They walked ahead of patrols, Rex's nose sweeping the ground in the particular pattern that detection dogs use, a zigzag, left to right, covering the width of the road or the path or the corridor, his body low, his tail level, his ears rotating like satellite dishes, picking up signals that no human sense could detect. Rex found things. That's what Rex did. That's what Rex was. A finding machine. A biological sensor more sensitive than any electronic device the Army possessed, capable of detecting explosive compounds at concentrations measured in parts per trillion. Parts per trillion. A single molecule of ammonium nitrate in 1,000,000,000,000 molecules of air, and Rex could smell it, could identify it, could tell Tamika, through a change in his body language so subtle that only she could read it, a slight stiffening of the shoulders, a fractional pause in his stride, a redirect of his nose toward the source, could tell her, here, right here, something is buried here that will kill people if they step on it. In 7 months, March to October 2007, Rex found 12 IEDs. 12. Buried in roads, hidden in culverts, concealed in the walls of buildings, packed into the frames of vehicles at checkpoints. 12 devices that would have detonated. 12 explosions that didn't happen. 12 times that people who were walking or driving or standing in a place didn't die because a 68-pound Belgian Malinois with a fawn coat and a black mask smelled something they couldn't smell and told his handler, and his handler told the patrol, and the patrol stopped, and EOD came, and the device was neutralized, and everyone went home. 12. I want you to hold that number. 12 IEDs. Each one containing enough explosive to destroy a vehicle, to kill everyone inside it, to send shrapnel through body armor and flesh and bone. Each one placed by someone who wanted Americans dead and who had the knowledge and the materials to make it happen. And each one found by Rex and Tamika, by a dog and a woman from East St. Louis who had never owned a dog before she was 19 and who had been told by 3 men for 9 months in 100 small ways that she couldn't control her dog. She could control her dog. She could read her dog. She could trust her dog. And her dog could trust her. That's what the bond is. That's what 9 months of harassment couldn't break and 12 IEDs proved. The bond between a handler and a working dog is not a feeling. It's not affection. It's not love. Not in the way civilians understand love. It's something harder than love. Something more precise. It's the absolute, tested, proven knowledge that when your dog tells you something, it's true. And when you tell your dog something, he believes you. It's mutual faith, mutual certainty. The certainty that comes not from hope, but from evidence, from 12 alerts, 12 fines, 12 times that the dog said here, and the handler said, I believe you, and the bomb was there. The convoy, October 14th, 2007. I'm going to tell you about this day the way Tamika told me. Not in military language, not in the compressed shorthand of an after-action report, but in the language of a woman sitting in a diner in St. Louis 14 years later, turning a coffee cup in her hands, speaking quietly, pausing sometimes to look out the window at the traffic on Natural Bridge Avenue, as if the traffic could tell her something about what happened that day that she hasn't already told herself 1,000 times. She said, we were at a checkpoint. FOB Salerno, not Bagram. We'd been moved south 2 months earlier. The checkpoint was on the main road into the FOB. Every vehicle that came and got searched. Everyone. That was our job, me and Rex. We searched vehicles. She said, that morning, a convoy came through. Walba Vehículos. Supply convoy, fuel trucks, cargo trucks, a couple of gun trucks for escort. They were coming in from a FOB to the north. Routine. They came through every week. Same route. Same schedule. Same vehicles, mostly. She said, Rex and I started at the front of the convoy. First vehicle, clear. Second vehicle, clear. Third vehicle. She stopped. She looked at her coffee. She turned the cup. 1 rotation. 2. She said, third vehicle. Rex changed. I can't explain it to someone who hasn't handled a dog. It's not. He didn't bark. He didn't sit. He didn't do any of the things that people think detection dogs do. He just changed. His shoulders went up. His breathing changed. His nose went to the ground under the vehicle and stayed there. And I knew. I knew before he gave the final alert. I knew because I'd seen it 12 times before, and every time it was real, and this time was real too. She said I called it. I said Rex has a response, and I pulled it back and I signaled the convoy to stop, and I called EOD on the radio, and everyone got out of their vehicles and moved to the safe distance, and EOD came, and they looked under the third truck, and she stopped again. Longer this time. She said it was in the frame, packed into the frame rail, enough to take out the truck, and probably the 2 vehicles on either side. The EOD tech said it was command detonated. Someone was watching, waiting for the convoy to get inside the FOB, waiting for maximum casualties. If Rex hadn't found it, if we'd waved that truck through. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Walba Vehículas. Dozens of soldiers. A bomb in the frame of the third truck, waiting for someone to press a button. She said, after EOD cleared it, after everyone was safe, after the convoy moved to a holding area, I was walking Rex back to the kennel, and someone called my name. Bowen. I turned around. There was a soldier standing there. From the convoy. He'd been in one of the vehicles, I don't know which one. Third, maybe fourth. Close enough. She said, he was looking at me, and I recognized him. She stopped. She put her coffee cup down. She put both hands flat on the table. She said, it was Goss, Aaron Goss. He'd transferred to a transportation unit. He was in that convoy. He was in one of those vehicles that would have. She didn't finish. I said, what did he say? She said, nothing. He looked at me. I looked at him. And then he turned around and walked back to his vehicle. Didn't say a word. Didn't say thank you. Didn't say sorry. Didn't say anything. I said, did you want him to? She was quiet for a long time. The longest silence of the 4 hours we spent in that diner. The traffic on Natural Bridge Avenue passed outside the window. A bus. A delivery truck. A woman pushing a stroller. The ordinary world doing its ordinary things while Tamika Bowen sat in a booth and decided how to answer a question that she'd probably been asking herself for 14 years. She said no. I didn't need him to say anything. Rex found the bomb. Rex saved those people. Rex doesn't know who Goss is. Rex doesn't know about the dog tags or the mud pit or any of it. Rex just knows his job, and his job saved that man's life. And that's enough. That has to be enough. Because if I need an apology to feel like what I did matters, then what I did doesn't matter on its own. And it does. It matters on its own. Rex's nose matters on its own. Our bond matters on its own. It doesn't need Aaron Goss's permission to matter. They came home in November 2007. 8 months. 8 months of dust and diesel and the particular exhaustion of a job that requires you to be alert every second of every day, because the consequence of 1 second of inattention is not a mistake on a form or a missed deadline or a bad performance review. The consequence is death. Yours, your dog's, the people behind you who are trusting you and your dog to find the thing that's waiting for them under the road. Tamika was 20 years old when she came home. She felt 40. She told me that. She said, I got off the plane at Fort Leonard Wood and I looked at the other soldiers coming home and they were hugging people. Wives, husbands, kids, parents. Everyone had someone waiting. I had Rex. Rex was in his crate in cargo. I went to get him before I went to the welcome home ceremony. I opened his crate and he came out and he put his nose against my hand and I stood there in the cargo area with my dog, and that was my welcome home. That was my family waiting for me. No one was there. No mother, no father, no grandmother had died in 2004, while Tamika was in basic training. No foster family. None of them had kept in touch. None of them had been the kind of family that keeps in touch. No friends from East St. Louis. She'd left at 18 and hadn't gone back. There was no one. There was Rex. She went back to work. Kennel duty at Fort Leonard Wood. Routine. Boring. The same gates, the same checkpoints, the same daily searches that found nothing because there was nothing to find. This was Missouri, not Cost Province, and the threats here were theoretical, and the work was maintenance, and the days were long and flat and identical in a way that days in a combat zone never are. Rex was bored too. She could see it. The way his energy changed, the way his alertness dimmed, the way he went through the motions of a search without the intensity that he'd had in Afghanistan. A detection dog needs to find things. That's the drive, the hunt, the search, the moment of discovery that triggers the reward. Without fines, the drive atrophies. Without real work, the dog becomes a pet. And Rex was not a pet. Rex was a weapon, a sensor, a 68-pound instrument of survival that had been tuned to the highest pitch by 7 months of real-world detection work. And that was now being asked to search empty cars at a gate in Missouri where nothing had ever been hidden and nothing ever would be. Tamika requested redeployment. In 2008, she put in a packet, volunteer to go back. Afghanistan again, or Iraq, anywhere that Rex could work, anywhere that the drive could be fed, anywhere that the bond between them could be used for what it was designed for, keeping people alive. The request was approved. They deployed again in early 2009, back to Afghanistan. Different FOB, this time Bagram again, full circle, back to the dust and the diesel and the mountains in the distance and the roads that hid things under their surfaces like secrets buried in skin. Second deployment, 7 more months. Rex found 6 more IEDs, 18 total across 2 deployments. 18 bombs, 18 times that a dog's nose and a handler's trust prevented an explosion. The math of it, if you want to do the math, if you want to quantify what Tamika Bowen and Rex M694 did in 14 months of combat deployment, the math is this. Each IED, conservatively, would have killed or wounded 3 to 5 people. 18 IEDs. 54 to 90 casualties prevented. Call it 70. 70 people who went home to their families because a dog smelled something and a woman believed him. 70. That's not in any report. That's not on any award citation. That's not a number that anyone has calculated officially because the military doesn't calculate prevented casualties. It calculates actual casualties, actual engagements, actual events. The things that didn't happen don't get counted. The bombs that didn't explode don't get reported. The people who didn't die don't get listed. The absence of tragedy is invisible. It has no paperwork. It has no ceremony. It has no medal. Tamika received an Army Commendation Medal. 1. For 14 months of combat deployment and 18 IED fines and 70 people who didn't die. An Arkham, the same award you get for doing a good job on a staff project. The same award you get for organizing a battalion ball. The same award you get for being competent at a desk for 12 months. That's what 18 IEDs is worth, apparently. That's what 70 lives is worth. A ribbon and a certificate signed by a colonel who never met her dog. She didn't complain. She never complained. Complaining requires the belief that the system will respond to your complaint, and Tamika Bowen had learned, at age 6, in her first foster home, the first time she asked for something and was told no without explanation, she had learned that the system does not respond to complaint from people like her. The system responds to people who have advocates, people who have families, people who have someone above them who will pick up a phone and say, "This isn't right. Fix it." Tamika had no one above her. Tamika had Rex. She got out in 2010. 5 years of service. Honorable discharge. She ETS'd at Fort Leonard Wood, the same base where she'd arrived at 19, terrified, 115 pounds, never having held a leash. She left at 23, a specialist with 2 combat deployments and 18 IED fines and an Arkham and a dog. The dog. This is the part one need to tell you about, because this is the part that matters most to Tamika and therefore matters most to me. When a military working dog retires, when the dog is too old or too injured or too worn to continue working, the dog can be adopted. First priority goes to the last handler. The handler who was with the dog most recently, who knows the dog best, who has the bond. The handler gets first right of refusal. If the handler wants the handler gets the dog. Rex was not retired when Tamika got out. Rex was 7 years old, still working age, still capable, still driven. He was reassigned to a new handler, a specialist named. It doesn't matter what his name was. What matters is that Rex went to someone else, someone who wasn't Tamika, someone who would hold his leash and give his commands and feed him and sleep beside him and be the person whose name Rex heard first in the morning and last at night. Tamika told me about the day she left Rex. She told me in the diner. Her voice changed. For the first time in 4 hours, her voice changed. It got not louder, not softer. It got thinner, like a wire being stretched, like something being pulled to its limit. She said, I walked him to the kennel. His new handler was there. I handed over the leash. Rex looked at me. He didn't. He didn't understand. Dogs don't understand goodbye. Dogs don't have a concept for, I'm leaving and not coming back. They only know present and absent. And I was about to become absent. And he was going to wait for me to become present again. And I wasn't going to. She said, I turned around and I walked away and he barked. Once. Just once. And I didn't turn around. Because if I turned around, I wasn't going to leave. And I had to leave. My enlistment was over. I couldn't stay for a dog. The Army doesn't let you stay for a dog. She said, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than the mud pit. Harder than the deployment. Harder than anything. Walking away from my dog. She drove to St. Louis. Got an apartment. Got a job. The veterinary clinic, where she could be near animals, where she could hold them and talk to them and use the voice she'd learned with Rex, the quiet, steady voice that says, I'm here. You're safe. We're working. She waited. 3 years. She waited for Rex to retire. She checked in, called the kennel at Fort Leonard Wood every few months, asked about him. How's he doing? Is he healthy? Is he working? Is he happy? The kennel staff knew her. They told her he's fine. He's good. He's still finding things. In 2013, Rex was retired. He was 10 years old. His hips were going the way big dogs' hips go, the cartilage wearing thin, the joints stiffening, the explosive speed of his youth becoming the careful, measured movement of age. He couldn't work anymore. He couldn't run the way detection work requires. He couldn't sustain the drive for a full shift. He was done. Tamika got the call. First right of adoption. She said yes before the sentence was finished. She drove to Fort Leonard Wood, 3 hours from St. Louis, and she walked into the kennel and Rex was there, in his run, lying on his side, gray around the muzzle now, thinner than she remembered. Slower. She opened the gate. She stepped inside. Rex lifted his head. He looked at her. And then she told me this, and her voice was the wire again, stretched thin, vibrating. Then he stood up, slowly, carefully, his hips protesting. But he stood up, and he walked to her, and he put his nose against her hand. The same gesture, the same place, the same pressure. The same thing he'd done 1,000 times in 2 deployments and 3 years of training, and every morning and every night for the years they were together. She said, he knew me. 3 years. 3 years apart. And he knew me. He put his nose on my hand, and She stopped. She looked out the window. The traffic on Natural Bridge Avenue. The bus. The delivery truck. The ordinary world. She said, I took him home. Rex is 11 years old now. It's 2021 when I'm sitting in this diner. He's 11. He's slow. His hips are bad. She gives him glucosamine and fish oil and keeps his bed on the floor so he doesn't have to jump. He sleeps 18 hours a day. He doesn't search anymore. He doesn't alert. He doesn't do the zigzag pattern or the shoulder stiffening or any of the things that made him what he was. He's just a dog now, an old dog in a small apartment in St. Louis with a woman who loves him in the way that only someone who's had everything taken from them can love the one thing that came back. He sleeps at the foot of her bed every night, the same position, the same place, the way he slept in her room at Fort Leonard Wood and in her hooch at Bagram and at FOB Salerno and everywhere they've ever been together. At the foot of the bed, guarding, even now, even at 11, even with hips that barely work and a nose that's lost half its sensitivity and eyes that are clouding with cataracts. He's still there, at the foot of the bed, still guarding. Tamika told me, people ask me if I'm lonely. I live alone, no partner, no kids, no family. People think that means lonely, but I have Rex, and Rex has me, and that's not lonely. That's complete. That's the most complete I've ever been. The dog tags. I need to come back to the dog tags. The ones that arrived in my mailbox in March 2021. The ones with the mud still in the letters. I asked Tamika, who sent them? She said, I think it was Okafor. Sergeant Okafor. He kept them. I said, he kept your original tags? The ones from the mud pit. She said, I didn't pick them up. Remember? I left them in the mud. I got new ones from supply, but someone picked them up. Someone went to that mud pit after I left and pulled them out and kept them. And I think it was Okafor, because Okafor was the kind of man who keeps evidence, even when he can't use it, even when there's no report to attach it to. He keeps it because someday someone might need it. I called Okafor. I asked him. He was quiet for a long time, the same kind of quiet that Tamika has, the quiet of people who are deciding how much truth to release into the world. Then he said, I went to the mud pit that morning, after she left, after she went to supply and got new tags and went to the kennel and trained Rex for 3 hours and passed her evaluation the next day. I went to the pit and I pulled them out and I cleaned them, mostly, not all the way. I left some in the mud, on purpose. I said why. He said, because the mud is the evidence. The mud is the proof. The mud says, someone put these here. Someone did this to her, and she didn't break. And I wanted there to be a record, even if it's just a pair of tags and a bag in my desk drawer. I wanted there to be something that said, this happened. She survived it. She was better than them. And the mud proves it. I said, why did you send them to me? Why now? He said, because I heard what you do. I heard you tell stories about women who served. And I thought, Bowen's story should be told. Not by me. I'm not a storyteller. I'm a dog trainer. But you're the guy who tells the stories. So I sent you the evidence. And I trusted you to find her. I found her. It took 4 months. But I found her. And she talked to me. And now I'm talking to you. I want to tell you one more thing. One more thing, and then I'll let you go. After the diner, after 4 hours and 6 cups of coffee and a story that started with dog tags in a mud pit and ended with an old dog sleeping at the foot of a bed. After all of it, Tamika walked me to my car. It was dark, July in St. Louis, hot, humid, the air thick enough to wear. We stood in the parking lot and she said, "Can I show you something?" I said yes. She pulled out her phone. She opened the photos. She scrolled, a long scroll, hundreds of photos, and I could see as she scrolled that they were almost all the same subject. Rex. Rex sleeping. Rex eating. Rex lying in a patch of sunlight. Rex on his bed. Rex in the car. Rex at the vet. Rex. 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 1,000 photos of one dog, taken over 8 years of togetherness. A visual record of a life shared between two beings who found each other in a kennel in Missouri and who have been together, with one 3-year interruption that neither of them has forgotten ever since. She found a photo she was looking for. She turned the phone toward me. The screen showed a shelf, a simple wooden shelf mounted on a wall. On the shelf, a pair of dog tags on a ball chain. Clean, polished, no move. New tags, the replacement set, the ones she got from Supply that morning in March 2006. Not the ones in the mud, not the ones Okafor kept. The clean ones, the ones she chose. Beside the tags, a small framed photo. Rex young, 3 years old. The photo from his military record. The official portrait that every MWD gets. The dog sitting, alert, ears forward, looking at the camera with the particular intensity of a working dog who is always, always ready. And beside the photo, a piece of paper. Small, handwritten. I couldn't read it on the phone screen. The resolution wasn't good enough. The handwriting was small. I asked her what it said. She said, "It says M694, 18 fines, 0 misses." 18 fines, 0 misses. Rex's record, his career statistics, the numbers that define what he did, not in human language, not in award citations or after-action reports or commendation medals, but in the only language that matters for a detection dog: finds and misses. Things found and things missed. And Rex missed nothing. In 14 months of combat deployment, in hundreds of searches, in thousands of vehicles and roads and buildings and open areas, Rex missed nothing. Every alert was real. Every find was confirmed. 0 false positives. 0 misses. That's what's on the shelf. Tox. A photo. A number. Not a bronze star. Not a silver star. Not a Medal of Honor. Not any of the things that the military gives to humans who do extraordinary things in combat. Dogs don't get those. Dogs get a retirement certificate and a transfer of ownership form, and, if they're lucky, a handler who comes back for them after 3 years and takes them home and lets them sleep at the foot of the bed until they can't sleep anymore. Rex got that. Rex got Tamika, and Tamika got Rex. And the shelf in her apartment is not a memorial. It's a record. A simple, factual, unadorned record of what they did together. 18 fines. 0 misses. That's the story. That's the whole story. Not the mud pit. Not the hazing. Not the 3 men who decided she didn't belong. Not the convoy. Not Goss's face in the parking lot. Not the silence that was louder than any apology could have been. Those are parts of the story. But the story, the real story, the one that Tamika would tell if she were telling it instead of me. The story is 18 fines and 0 misses, and a dog who came home to her after 3 years and put his nose on her hand and said, in the only language dogs have, "I'm still here." I waited. I'm still here. I drove home from St. Louis. 11 hours. Through the dark, through Illinois and Kentucky and Tennessee and the Carolinas. I had the dog tags on the passenger seat, the muddy ones, the ones Okafor sent me, the ones with Bowen, Tamika L, stamped in a metal that still carries the residue of a Missouri mud pit from 15 years ago. I thought about sending them to her, mailing them to her apartment in St. Louis with a note. These are yours. Someone kept them for you. Someone wanted you to have them back. I didn't. I kept them. They're on my desk now in Beaufort, next to my coffee cup and my reading glasses and the stack of letters from women who serve that I haven't answered yet and that I will answer one by one, the way I answer everything, slowly, carefully, with the attention that each name deserves. I kept them because Tamika doesn't need them. Tamika has clean tags. Tamika chose clean tags. Tamika stood at the edge of a mud pit at 19 years old and decided, I am not getting in that mud for them. My name is not in the mud. My name is on my dog's collar. My name is in my dog's head. The muddy tags are evidence. They're Okafor's evidence. They're the record of what was done to her and what she refused to let me. They belong in the archive, in the collection of things that prove what happened to women who served, things that the system didn't document, because the system doesn't document the things it allows to happen to the people it's supposed to protect. I have the tags. I have the story. I have the number. 18 finds, 0 misses. I have the image of an old dog sleeping at the foot of a bed in St. Louis, guarding a woman who doesn't need guarding anymore, but who deserves it anyway, who has always deserved it. I have 2 dogs, Buck and Sergeant. Buck is named Buck because he is one, stubborn, headstrong, does what he wants when he wants. Sergeant is named Sergeant because he thinks he is one, bossy, opinionated, convinced that he's in charge of the household and that I'm just the private who feeds him. They're not military working dogs. They're not trained. They're not weapons or sensors or instruments of survival. They're just dogs. Old dogs like me, lying on the porch in Beaufort, watching the street, waiting for nothing in particular. But they do the thing that all dogs do, the thing that Rex does, the thing that Biscuit did for 11 months when Tamika was 9 years old and living in a house that wasn't hers with people who weren't her family. They stay. That's what dogs do. They stay. They don't leave. They don't transfer you to a different home. They don't put your name in the mud. They don't spread rumors about you. They don't decide, before you arrive, that you don't belong. Dogs don't lie about loyalty. People do. Dogs just don't. Tamika Bowen knows this. She's known it since she was 9. She's known it since Biscuit. She's known it since Rex. She's known it since a mud pit in Missouri and a convoy in Afghanistan and a 3-year separation and a nose on her hand that said, I waited. I'm still here. If her hometown is your hometown, if you're from East St. Louis or Fort Leonard Wood or Bagram or any of the places where Tamika Bowen was quiet and competent and present and unacknowledged, let me know down below. Say her name once today, out loud or to yourself. Doesn't matter. Just once. Bowen, Tamika. It's not in the mud anymore. It's on a shelf. Clean. Next to a photo of a young dog with alert ears and a piece of paper that says 18 and 0. That's the record. That's enough. Rex is 11. He won't be 11 forever. Dogs don't get forever. Dogs get what? 12 years. 14 if you're lucky. 14 years of loyalty and presence and the particular grace of a creature that doesn't know how to be anything other than what it is. 14 years, and then they're gone, and you're alone again, and the foot of the bed is empty, and the apartment is quiet in a way it hasn't been quiet since before they came into your life. Tamika knows this is coming. She told me at the end, as I was getting into my car, as the St. Louis heat pressed down on both of us like a hand, she told me, I know he doesn't have much time left. His hips, his eyes, he's slowing down. Every day, he's a little slower. And I'm trying to be ready. But you can't be ready. You can't prepare for the absence of the thing that made you whole. I said, what will you do after? She looked at me, and she smiled the first time, the only time in 4 hours. A small smile. Not happy, not sad. Something else. Something that contains both and is neither. She said, I'll go back to Fort Leonard Wood. I'll go to the kennel, and I'll ask if there's a dog that needs someone. A dog that nobody wants. A dog that's difficult or old or broken or unwanted. And I'll take that dog home. And I'll start again. Start again. The way she's always started. From nothing. From absence. From the empty space where a family should be and isn't. From a mud pit where a name was put and wasn't retrieved. From the cargo hold of the plane, where a dog waited in a crate and a woman didn't sleep because she couldn't see him. From the beginning. Always from the beginning. Because Tamika Bowen doesn't know how to start from anywhere else. And because starting from nothing is not a weakness. Starting from nothing is proof that you don't need anything to begin. You just need to begin. She'll begin again with a new dog, a new name on a new collar, a new nose on her hand in the morning, a new weight at the foot of the bed. And Rex. Rex will be on the shelf, next to the tags, next to the photo, next to the number. 18 finds, 0 misses, a career, a life, a partnership that started in a kennel in Missouri and will end in a small apartment in St. Louis where a woman and a dog lived together and were complete. That's the story, not the mud pit, not the hazing, not the 3 men whose names I've given you and who don't deserve the space they take up in this narrative, but who are here because the truth requires them to be here. Because you can't tell the story of what Tamika survived without telling the story of what was done to her. And what was done to her was done by specific people with specific names who made specific choices on specific days. Moody, Fitch, Goss. 3 names, 3 men, 3 choices, repeated daily for 9 months in 100 small ways that never rose to the level of a single reportable incident, but that collectively constituted a campaign of erasure. A campaign that failed. A campaign that produced not a broken handler, but a better one. Not a woman who doubted her dog, but a woman who trusted her dog more completely than she trusted any human being alive. Not a victim, but a survivor. Not a story about what was done to her, but a story about what she did despite it. 18 finds, 0 misses. 1 dog, 1 woman, 1 bond that 3 men couldn't break and 9 months couldn't weaken and 3 years of separation couldn't dissolve and 11 years of life together have only deepened. That's the record. That's what I have. That's what Okafor sent me in a padded envelope with no return address. Not just dog tags, but a record, a proof, an artifact that says, she was here. She was tested. She did not break. The mud is still in the letters. I haven't cleaned it. I won't clean it. The mud is the story. The mud is the evidence. The mud is the thing that says, someone put her name in the dirt and she left it there and walked away and became the best handler in her class and found 18 bombs and saved 70 lives and took her dog home and lives in St. Louis and works at a vet clinic and holds animals when they're scared and talks to them in a quiet, steady voice and goes home every night to an old dog who sleeps at the foot of her bed. The mud is the proof that she didn't need to pick her name up out of the dirt. Her name was never in the dirt. Her name was always somewhere higher. Her name was always on a collar, on a leash, in a dog's head, in the space between a handler's command and a dog's response, in the alert, in the find, in the 18 times that Rex said here and Tamika said, I believe you, and the bomb was there and nobody died. Her name was always there. The mud was just mud. Private First Class Tamika Bowen. United States Army, military working dog handler, Mo's 31K, out of East St. Louis, Illinois. No family on record. 18 finds, 0 misses. 1 dog. If her hometown is your hometown, let me know. Say her name once today, out loud or to yourself. Doesn't matter. Just once. Bowen, Tamika. The dog knows it. The dog has always known it.